I suppose I always like museums or galleries that have a sort of spirituality to them. In the way that you enter and you're surrounded by these huge paintings and you're just in this world of colour. There's a sort of moment there where you really feel like you're contemplating something very deep. It's an exciting moment for me, you know, just to have my first solo show in Paris after being an artist and working in the art world. I have a relationship with Paris. My wife went to the Beaux-Arts there. And every time I visited, I always visited the Orangerie to see the Monet paintings. I wanted to take one of those paintings, one called Green Reflections, and delve into it as a piece of work and delve into the colours of what made that painting special in some way for me. And then to create this series of 30 watercolours from what I see as the most important core value of what makes that painting special. As you enter the exhibition, I want to kind of feel like you're stepping into the painting. And I want the viewer to feel like every part of that, what they're looking at, is to do with that painting or to be immersed within that painting. So you're sort of creating a world based on just one very, very famous painting. I try and look very, very close, sort of every detail of the painting and necessary, and find the colors that sort of really jump out. So to break it down into this sort of perfect palette. I mean, this has come from a much larger body of work as well that in my previous show in Milwaukee. To take great old master paintings and to try and understand them in terms of the sense of colour. I'd take something like Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring, painting that many people know and they have an image in their mind already. And I would take that painting and then I would break it down into what I saw as the most important colours, so a series of palettes, if you like. This is really fun actually if you look at this. So this is just all the breaking down of what we think makes up that particular colour. All the ingredients, if you like. So we always sort of make these incredible sort of swatches and details of colours. And then the process beyond that is taking the reproduction of the painting, scanning it into a program and taking sound and musical notation from the surface of that painting. It makes a musical score in correspondence to what it sees through tone and colour, and it allocates a notation to what it reads on the painting. It's almost like the painting writing itself. And I've always kind of loved that idea that you could hear the sound of a painting. And then I create those and I make those into these stamps. These are the tools, put them onto the painting and start to build up the layers. They're pretty objects. I have over 100,000 of these stamps now. From that process, I start to collage. A lot of the actual sheet music that I use is found music. It doesn't necessarily have to correspond to a particular type of music. It's more a visual thing, where the lines meet or the actual composition on the page. I spend a lot of time in music shop and just look at different compositions on the score. You know, they're all different. The actual ink color, the oil, is the score taken from the painting. The actual sheet music is just found music. Each one gets washed with watercolor. And actually what's really interesting is that each time you wash the paper, it actually comes up with a different sort of tone and different color. Just that alone is kind of a beautiful painting, I think. And then I use these to start to work on the collage. And then I think for these works, especially, I'm going to try and play with different tones. It's actually amazing in terms of color theory what it does to your eye when you start to play with different colors on top of each other. It's like a fun game really, just playing with what dramatically changes, bringing this one down in the center as well. Playing with form really. And I never glue them flat. I like to have movement in the paper as well to really know that it's collage. So it feels like a different texture, if you like, on top of the surface, you know. We're left with something that's quite beautiful, quite delicate, sort of a feast for the eyes, maybe. And a lot of what I do is to do with text, disappearing music. And of course then, the music's there and it's not there, it's eradicated, it's erased. I've always sort of worked with something to do with the visible and not visible. The process of eradicating language and erasure and overlays and repetition came from a couple of key moments in my life. I was raised as a Muslim. I stopped practicing when I was 18, but I always feel that I have a connection to that faith. And through that faith, actually, it's more to do with repetition. So I was taught to read the Quran 1 page per week. The repetition of language, of overlaying the words, repeating and repeating, is embedded into what I feel like I do today. And another side of that, especially within the watercolor paintings, using sheet music. And the reason I've always had music in, and especially the materiality of the paper, is because my mother, when she was a pianist, a very talented pianist, suffered from a lot of mental health issues. But I always remember her being happiest when she was playing the piano. I remember just going into her piano room and there'd be sheet music all over the floor. In some way for me it was an introduction to what I thought high art was. I thought music was high art. It's the highest form of abstraction. To have that memory is a really beautiful thing that will always continue, I think, in my work. I feel for me the show is very much about the different ways of using words, using different languages in the way that you can be very expressive with text, but also very detailed in terms of time and layers, and building up layers and memories. And I know it can be frustrating at times for a lot of people because they want to know what's written. And I get that because, we're intrigued by a lot of things. You're just left with these little pockets of words and notes and letters to try and make sense of something that's in that work. It no longer matters for me what's written there, because in the process of making a painting, the language is gone. What's left is the impression of that language, and then people can bring their own language to it. It doesn't matter what I wrote, it's matter what you bring as an emotion and an understanding of your own language.